Okay, good evening, everyone. The board just returned from executive session where we conducted an interview, and now I need a motion for the board to return to our regular meeting. Kristen, motion, can I have a second? Diane, all those in favor? 6, nothing. Motion passes 6, right? 6. Oh, 6. Okay, we'd like to open up the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if our student representatives would lead us in that, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start with administrators' comments. Victor, you want to go first?
I'm actually just going to reserve my comments for the budget presentation.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gall?
Okay, good evening. I just have 2 comments. One has to do with our March 6th Professional Learning Day. So last Wednesday was our last full Professional Learning Day of the year, and the day was designed by our professional learning team using feedback from our fall survey. So we had our inquiry strands in the morning. We had time in the afternoon to give feedback on our SCP rubrics, and then there were various activities also in the afternoon designed by the building principals and the liaisons. So we plan on sending out a survey this week to use in our future planning for next year. So I'd like to thank all the inquiry strand facilitators who volunteered to take on a new responsibility this year and were able to craft the professional learning that experience that fit best based on the needs of the professionals in the strand. So when things calm down a bit and there's space on a board agenda, we would love to come forward and talk a little bit about the strand and some of the things that organically came out of these strands as they were led by teachers and administrators collaborating together. And my second comment has to do with our K-5 math study. This week, members of the K-5 math study team started going into classrooms together to see the 2 curricular resources in action. So this is part of our ongoing assessment of these resources to see what it looks like. And we hope to make a recommendation to you in April, right around the corner. So I'd like to thank Mrs. Lynn Olson, Mrs. Ann Burns, Mrs. Sarah Chasen, Mr. Frank Lamort, and Mrs. Catherine Marciano, Mrs. Amy Butera, and Mr. Joe Regan, and last, Mrs. Ali Scilia, who have opened up their classrooms and allowed all these adults to come in, and we're most appreciative of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Culligan?
Good evening. I'm going to reserve my comments for executive session. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Henning?
Thank you. Good evening, Board Trustees. I'd like to congratulate someone who doesn't want to be congratulated, but she has no choice. I want to congratulate Dr. Michelle Gosch. Dr. Gosch, we have to get used to that, defended her dissertation on Monday from Johns Hopkins University. The title of her dissertation was Student Belonging in Self-Beliefs or Efficacy. Her degree will be conferred in May, so we can't, we're so proud because, as you know, Michelle is a wonderful professional and someone who I think has exemplified in this, the completion of what my grandmother referred to as the big paper, what perseverance and adaptability look like. So again, congratulations, Michelle. I'd like to thank Ms. Karen Dakins and Ms. Christian Hernandez, who accompanied 3 seniors to Albany this past weekend to participate in a legislative mock assembly sponsored by the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute, whose goal is to get young people interested in government and leadership. 3 of our students attended, Emily Perez Molina, Yasmin Peralta Venegas, and Imna Sandoval were there represented, and there was another student from Carmel who accompanied them, but they were there to learn how the government works at the state level and also what an individual's role is in participating in government. So it was a great example of civic responsibility. Emily walked away with a scholarship that she will use towards her study in the nursing program at Mercy College, which she starts in the fall. So congratulations to Emily for that, and thank Ms. Dakin and Mrs. Hernandez for attending that and making it possible. I left for each board trustee the first robotics competition flyer, which is FIRST stands for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. It's a robotics competition that will take place at Rockland Community College on March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's all day. Ms. Rebecca Greenfield is the teacher who's teaching engineering and robotics, and students are so excited about participating in this competition. It's been a part of the Putnam County landscape for a while, so it's really awesome that our students will be there. So if you are around on March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, please get over to Rockland Community College and support our team. Congratulations to the following students at Brewster High School for receiving a Putnam County 2019 Youth Award for their exemplary community service. Brendan Fox, Charlotte Green, Nora Palladino, and Aaron Renzi. They are going to be recognized with other students from Putnam County on April 11th at the 34th Annual Youth Awards Dinner. And finally, I'm sure the board members had a chance to take a look at the NYSSBA advocacy update. If you didn't get a chance, one of the major items that's being advocated for through NYSSBA, which is the New York State School Boards Association, is changing the polling locations out of schools so that schools are not the places where the public comes to vote. I don't know what the alternatives are, but we certainly see the challenges since Brewster High School is a polling location, and with all of our security efforts, those are completely shut down because we obviously have to make sure that our public has access to the buildings. So that's something that they're looking at to try to influence a change. NYSSBA is also promoting the integration, which we're proud that we're engaged in through our code of conduct, restorative practices. Mr. Clark and Mrs. Hernandez have been using those approaches pretty diligently and have met with a great deal of success. So we'll continue to use those, use the restorative practices, build those. Mr. Mike Hennessy is a certified trainer, so we have someone on hand who is able to work with all of our staff. And our code of conduct will obviously is in the throes of being revised, and it'll include our efforts around PBIS, OVEUS, and Ruler and COPE. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
All right, as far as the president's comments, first off, I'm obviously not Soni Masika. She is unexpectedly out of the country, so I am sitting in for her tonight. I did want to give an update regarding the superintendent search. We are in the final stages with our final candidate, and we expect that we should be in a position at the next meeting to give a further update on that. And that is the only comments that I have, so we will now go to our student representatives, Irene Kubinik and Cameron Hart.
Hello. The first news item is Mamma Mia opens March 21st until the 23rd. Tickets are on sale now for $15 for the students, $18 for adults, and $18 at the door. This Friday, the international dinner will happen at the high school for the Italy trip to raise money. Tickets are $10 for students and $15 for adults. Children under 5 are free. It's at 6:30, and there will be raffles to win and food served. It's to benefit the Italy trip. The blood drive is this Thursday during school for the high school. Meal Theta is having its annual Pie Day to raise money for the Math-a-thon on Thursday. March 28th is the Art Honor Society induction ceremony.
Some other worthy events. The Mr. Brewster Spectacular Show was put on March 1st, where Pat Nevin won the Mr. Brewster competition, raising a total over $13,000 himself, and the total number of funds that we raised together for cystic fibrosis for that day was $54,000. So that was a pretty awesome accomplishment. Model UN is going on their conference in DC in a couple of weeks. As we already talked about, Emily Perez received a scholarship for $1,500 from the Puerto Rican Youth Leadership Forum. Spring sports start this week. Winter Sports Awards are tomorrow at 6:30, where we recognize the athletes for their individual performances and team performances. The marching band will be marching at the St. Patrick's Day Parade on Saturday at 11 a.m. And the senior social studies classes had their students register to vote today, and that's a pretty important step in our senior life. So that was pretty cool to do today as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to presentations, recognition, and discussion, starting with the Mamma Mia preview.
So Brewster High School's show Mamma Mia opens in 9 days. ABBA's popular hit tells the hilarious story of a young woman's search for her birth father. This sunny and funny tale unfolds on a Greek island paradise. On the eve of her wedding, a daughter's quest to discover the identity of her father brings 3 men from her mother's past back to the island they visited 20 years ago. The storytelling magic of ABBA's timeless songs propels the enchanting tale of love, laughter, and friendship, creating an unforgettable show. Non-stop laughs and explosive dance numbers combine to make Brewster High School's Mamma Mia. Tonight we'll be seeing a short scene from Erin Lauren as Sam and Caitlin Otto as Donna, the mother, and then Caitlin will sing The Winner Takes It All from Act 2.
I don't want to talk about the things we've gone through, though it's hurting me. Now it's history. I played all my cards, and that's what you've done too. Nothing more to say, no more ace to play. The winner takes it all, the loser standing small beside the victory. That's her destiny. I was in your arms, thinking I belonged there. I figured it made sense, building me a fence, building me a home, thinking I'd be stronger, but I was a fool, playing by the rules the gods made for all the dice, their minds as cold as ice, and someone way down here loses someone dear. The winner takes it all, the loser has to fall. It's simple and it's plain, why should I complain? But tell me, does she kiss like I used to kiss you? Does it feel the same when she calls your name? Somewhere deep inside, you must know I miss you. What more can I say? Rules must be obeyed. The judges will decide. The likes of me abide, and spectators at the show small, the winner takes it all. I don't want to talk because it makes me feel sad, and I understand you've come to shake my hand. I apologize if it makes you feel bad, seeing me so tense, no self-confidence. But you see, the winner takes it all. The winner takes it all. The game is on again, a lover or a friend, a big thing or a small, the winner takes it all. The winner takes it all.
That was fantastic, thank you. I'm sure that that is what I sound like when I'm singing in the car. I just don't know it. So, and I think you said that the dates for the show are March 21st to the 23rd? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So obviously we encourage everyone to get out and see that. I'm sure it will be outstanding. Moving on to the second item, instructional technology replacement plan and BOCES installation purchase agreement with Jim Trelaw and Victor Carlson.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal for funding for instructional technology. And just wanted to start off with the vision that Brewster has for technology use in the district. And that is to engage all learners in authentic problem and project-based learning, and to inspire and empower them to ask and answer questions of personal and public interest and be responsible digital citizenship. This again kind of guides the work that we do throughout the entire department. I wanted to give a brief overview of all of the aspects that the Technology and Innovation Department covers, and this doesn't even do the full list justice, but in the four main areas of network, data, instructional, and communication, we touch all parts of the district, whether it's the TransFinder to help out with the buses, timepiece for all the hourly employees, the cybersecurity and the doors, cameras for the physical security throughout the district, as well as all of the instructional tools and the communication tools, really are all managed and supported through our department. And over the past 5 years, we've had quite a number of accomplishments. So we've been able to expand our use of Chromebooks, putting a device in every single student's hand in grades 1 through 12. And students in grades 6 through 12 are taking them home for the past couple of years. We've upgraded the infrastructure. So many of you may remember 5, 6, 10 years ago when we didn't have this kind of full, complete coverage where every instructional space in the district now is covered with reliable Wi-Fi. This coming weeks, we will be rolling out DEI to support Project Lead the Way, arts and music, for students to be able to do this work, their work both in class and at home on any device. We've added redundancy to both our firewalls and our data backup so that we can make sure that there's continuous uptime and the ability for disaster recovery should anything happen to any one of our data servers. And also, same thing with automatic failover of the internet to make sure that if one of our sources of internet goes down, then we're able to automatically fail over to the next. And all of this to support these kind of programs. This is from 5th grade class last week. Students working with Smart Music, which is an incredible tool to give immediate feedback to students as they're playing to let them know every single note whether they're doing it correctly. You've heard about Project Lead the Way numerous times. We've expanded this to all grade levels where really this is hands-on, minds-on science, engineering, and math that's integrated. And really supporting the strategic coherence plan and the skills that we've really worked to support. Genius Hour passion projects that students are really posing their own questions that they want to investigate and really come up with answers and hopefully even more questions. Kindness Rocks, I know you've heard about that. That's just an incredible project-based learning project that is happening at second grade. Kids are using Google Maps to lay out where the rocks have been found. They're using the word processor to be able to write letters to local businesses. So this is the kind of thing that all the technology that we've been doing is supporting, and we want to make sure that we're doing that, and that's the reason for this proposal for funding. There are some challenges that we're facing. The devices that we have are aging, both whether it's the desktops, which are many of them, at the beginning of this year, we had over half of them over 7 years old that we're in the process of replacing, but we still need to continue that. Right now, 575 of our students either do not have a Chromebook or have outdated ones that don't have the touch screen, so they can't fully utilize all of the instructional programs that we support. And I would ask many of you how old your cell phone is. Many of us don't allow our cell phones to get more than 4 or 5 years old. Devices, especially in the hands of teenagers, don't last very long. So our Chromebook repairs have gone up. They really do need to be replaced every 4 years, and that's where, as students are entering the middle school and the high school, we're providing them with a new device to be able to last them throughout their time here at Brewster, and that it's a fully functional device that can do all of the things that they hope to do. 50% of our smart boards are over 10 years old, and that's part of our Smart Schools Bond Act that we're hoping to replace some of those, and some of that will come from this proposed funding. By adding over 3,000 devices to Brewster, it adds a strain on our staffing. We have not increased our staff, but with the redundant firewalls, with the backup that we've employed, these are some complex programs that really require a lot of effort, professional training, to really dig in and learn how they're used and to be able to devote that expertise. And so additional staff it will be welcomed through this proposal. And you're going to learn about how that happens. So over the course of the last 5 years, though, we have had some intermittent funding, and that does cause spikes in needs. So needing to buy a redundant firewall and the extra data backup last year when I came on board was something that happened because there was not this consistent funding in place. And those kind of things do increase our vulnerability. And we have aging devices, they're not up to date. Viruses and Trojan horses, any kind of other malware can get on them. Without proper data backup, then we have the risk of not being able to recover from a serious loss of data. So our plan is threefold. It involves an installment purchase agreement, which is essentially a loan that is for technology that's facilitated by the state. An on-site field support COSER through Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, and then capitalizing on the state aid that is garnered because of doing the two of these together. So the first one I'm going to let Mr. Carlson speak to, and that is on the installment purchase agreement.
So Mr. Traylor laid the groundwork for this as soon as he arrived here in Brewster, and he and I had a discussion over the summer which assisted me in developing the district's long-range financial plan. So back in October, before we realized the availability of BOCES, we first established the need in our long-range financial plan, which is referenced and it's on our website. So we knew that through the Smart Schools Bond Act, we received about $1.6 million towards instructional technology. And what that does is it could create a fiscal cliff had we invested the full amount immediately. However, that money was invested strategically over the past 3 or 4 years, and we purchased a number of devices each year. And we did that purposefully so that we could replace these devices incrementally over time, rather than have a $1.6 million need in a single year, say in year 4 or year 5. So the strategy to employ an installment purchase agreement we developed over the summer, again, reinforced it through our long-range planning. So the $1.6 million that we received through Smart Schools, we would then replace over a period of 4 years, and by borrowing $400,000 each year and paying it off over a period of 4 years. And that way we maintain the devices that we have in place today, and we're able to replace those devices as they inevitably become obsolete. So the impact on the budget is actually incremental, and this is a screenshot from our long-range financial plan. As you see, if we borrow over a period of 4 years, our incremental cost each year is just $100,000. So leading into the 1920 school year, you would see that the cost would be just $100,000 just on the principal. I'm talking gross cost here too. As Jim mentioned, there is a significant amount of BOCES aid that we receive on these purchases. So this presentation, or this portion of the presentation, is just specific with the actual the IPA. So as you can see, over a period of 4 years, we're incrementally increasing our commitment until we reach the year 23-24, and our total commitment is already embedded in the budget. You see again, the incremental increase on the budget becomes 0 in the year 23-24 because we've been fully committed to this plan. This is the same methodology that we've employed with the bus replacement plan that we're now in year 6 or 7 of our fleet replacement plan. And as we see, the incremental increase on the tax levy is minimal at this point. So we wanted to employ the same methodology rather than not have a plan in place and have a need of $1.6 million in a given year, which obviously would not be sustainable.
Okay, so one of the benefits, one of the requirements, but also a benefit of participating in an installment purchase agreement is to have a collaborative agreement in place and participate in a COSER through the Lower Hudson RIC. And what that does is provides us with an additional network specialist in the district to support the devices that we would be purchasing with those funds. It also provides the deep knowledge base and added support of all of the staff at the Lower Hudson RIC. So if we need help with a specific program or software that we may not have full expertise in, we'll be able to tap into their knowledge base there. Also, there is an economy of scale that's built into participating with the Lower Hudson RIC and BOCES. And that is that some of the things that they can get at a lower cost and as well are part of this COSER will allow us to not have to purchase those. So there's a number of pieces of software that we're spending money on currently that we will no longer need to purchase because we're part of this COSER that they will provide to us. So that's there's a cost avoidance by participating in the COSER. Because Brewster has such a high aid ratio, it's 48% on the BOCES administrative cost, which is approximately 20% of the COSER. That's 48%. We get 59% back in state aid on all of our hardware and software and services that we purchase through the COSER and through this IPA, as well as other hardware purchases that we make. One of the things that we realized through looking at this program was that there's a number of pieces of software that we do subscribe to that we now will get aid on in addition to those pieces of software that we no longer need to purchase. Also, our current contract, which is for our printers, which is up this year, we will now be able to go put through the Lower Hudson RIC and be able to get aid on that as well, which is roughly around $100,000 that we would then get around 50% back on. So when it's all said and done and we have the $400,000 that we've loaned through this that is facilitated through Lower Hudson RIC and the state. And because of the aid, the cost avoidance, we have just a net cost of $259,000. So by participating in the COSER, purchasing this, it will cost us less than if we took $400,000, added it to our operating budget every year, and just bought the devices ourselves. So, what we are asking is that at the next board meeting, that for approval by the board of the proposal that Victor has provided you with, or will, it has already been approved by the Lower Hudson RIC Board of Education, and as soon as it's approved here, it can be sent to the state in roughly 6 weeks. Once that's approved, then the funding comes through, and we're able to then begin making purchases. So, any questions?
I just have a question. With the state, once, because I know with the 1.6 million, it took a long time for us to get approval. Is there a lapse in getting that funding, the approval from the state?
No, but the state aid, are you referring to the state aid or the actual approval
The
for the
approval by the state.
No, the approval by the state actually happens pretty quickly. And our state aid comes in the subsequent year, so our BOCES services, whenever we purchase a BOCES service, the aid comes in the following year.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was going to be a holdup like there was before where we couldn't move forward. Okay.
No, this is a pretty routine process, and that Lyric has assured us it's really between 4 and 6 weeks that it takes to get the approval from the state.
Thank you.
I also just want to add that installment purchase agreements are not new to the district. About 4 years ago, the district took out an installment purchase agreement privately, not through BOCES. And we're actually completing the 5th year of that IPA, and I think the IPA that year was about $500,000. And that was to upgrade our initial wireless infrastructure, knowing that Smart Schools was coming down the pike, that we needed to prepare ourselves. So an installment purchase agreement is not a new vehicle for the district. It's used by most districts. And again, it's similar to our fleet replacement plan, which allows us to incrementally build into our budget the replacement of these devices that are so critical for our students.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you both. We're going to move on to number 3, which is the 2019-20 budget discussion with Dr. Henning Piedmont and Mr. Carlson.
Good evening again. This is the second presentation of the 2019-2020 school budget. You've heard Victor and all of us talk about the profile of the graduate as being the basis for what our budget supports, and it's the vision. A budget is a vision statement, basically, and so all of the work that we're doing is really in support of ensuring that all of our students are successful in life, work, and future learning, and that all of the additions that you will see in the budget are in service to these goals, which are, considered our 21st century learning goals that all students have access to, that all students need to be successful in careers, in work, in college, and in whatever they're doing, in the military, whatever they're doing, they will need these skills, and you certainly have seen these around our district, and we talk about them quite a bit. And we believe in these, and we certainly want to make sure that we do everything possible to make these come to fruition for our students. You've also heard us talk about quite a bit in our Budget 101 series, which Victor spent a great deal of time creating so that we provide background information, really essential, foundational information about what goes into the development of the school budget. And the 101 series, which is also on our website, really goes into depth in terms of, ensuring that everything with regards to whether we're talking about revenue and expenses, the portion of the budget that we control, the portion of the budget that we do not control, variables that impact what happens from year to year, all of those were part of the Budget 101 series. Again, done to make sure that you're aware, done to make sure that everything that you hear from this point forward is transparent, and then most importantly, that the challenges and the opportunities are embedded in the budget, and the Budget 101 series helps to sort of lay that foundation of understanding. Again, our priority is always to comply with the tax cap. This is the 8th consecutive year. Another priority is to reduce contingency and appropriate fund balance. So again, we obviously have to have some reserves because in a year, and this has been one of the years, through whether it's mandated services, we have to make sure that we comply with those services and provide the instruction necessary for students. And so having the ability to draw that from contingency is really critical. We use a hybrid model, so it's a combination of zero-based budgeting as well as historical. So you can talk to any budget manager, and those who were here last 2 weeks ago who talked about their budgets, they'll tell you that they have to justify every expenditure, that they have to defend every choice that they're making. So it's not a rollover, so I spent this amount last year and this is the same amount this year. They have to justify it, and that's at the heart of zero-based budgeting. In addition, we also use a historical data to make sure that we're looking at, what we spent on certain things and why those things are essential and necessary. We obviously are always concerned about meeting our mandates and that ensuring that our budget reflects those mandates. Again, security and safety, which you've heard Mr. Treloar talk about. He spends a lot of time looking at how to make sure that we are efficient, as well as our SROs can tell you that we spend a great deal of time making sure that we adhere to those and that we practice the best safety measures possible. Again, the profile of graduate is all about both academic and social emotional programs and services that we need for our children. And we continue to focus over and over on preparing our children for success in work, life, and future learning.
So each year, the circumstances presents a unique set of circumstances leading up into the budget. So last year, you all recall, we had a very challenging year because we were affected by the significant increase in the teachers' retirement system, the pension contribution rates. 2019-20 actually brings a year of opportunities. You see here we have the 3 opportunities that we've listed. The allowable tax cap, which I'll speak in much greater detail, is allowing for a 4% increase in the tax levy. Pension contribution relief for next year, the TRS system actually has a rate-to-rate decrease of 16.6%, and the employees' retirement system has a rate-to-rate decrease of 2%. On the revenue side of the budget, interest rates are climbing, which is good for our district. And when they increase from nearly 0% to 2%, the impact on the money in our bank account is significant. So you'll see that on the revenue side of our budget. So I just want to begin tonight just to review a couple of definitions because I had a very good budget advisory committee meeting last night. I thank all the budget advisory committee members for both attending last night, and I see a number of you here this evening as well. One thing I want to talk about is the difference between the tax cap and the tax levy. So the tax cap is formally known as the maximum allowable tax levy, and that's really a benchmark that the state created based on a formula that applies to all the nearly 700 school districts in New York State. However, each school district in New York State has a unique tax cap number, so it's not the same number for every school. In fact, all schools are different, and I listed here, just based on the data that's available at this point in time, some of the tax cap figures from around the state, and I have no idea where these school districts are located. I just know that of their data. So for the 1920 budget year, the highest tax cap in the state is the Salamanca City School District, and that is not a typo. It's 131%. It's a very small school district. I just looked up their information. Very small tax levy. Nevertheless, their tax cap, meaning the benchmark that New York State set by virtue of the formula, has their tax cap at 131%. On the other side, the lowest tax cap in the state is a negative 25%. And yes, the tax cap can be a negative number because of the different factors. So Indian River Central School District has a tax cap of negative 25%. So the other definition is the tax levy. So the tax levy is the actual amount of taxes that the district is required to collect to support the budget. And it's adopted by the Board of Ed when the board adopts the budget. here in Brewster will be adopting the budget on April 23rd. So the tax levy can be more or less or the same as the tax cap. If the tax levy, again, the amount that the board adopts with the budget is higher than the tax cap, well, then that's considered an override, and it would require 60% voter approval in order for the budget to pass. If the tax levy, again, the amount that the board is approving in the budget is the same or less than the tax cap, well, then it's only a simple majority required for passing the budget. So the tax cap and the tax levy are two different things. Again, tax cap is a benchmark. Tax levy is the amount that the board actually adopts and is recommending to raise in taxes to support the budget. So what's driving the tax cap increase? So as you saw, just based on the data from across the state, it can vary. So we have one district that has a 131% tax cap increase, and another district that has a 25% tax cap decrease. And it's really no different from year to year. And here in Brewster, I showed our past 5 years, and we've been somewhat blessed and cursed with consistency. So if you look from 15-16 through 18-19, our tax cap range has just been 2.04 to 2.22. Not a very large range. However, the factors to get to those tax caps vary by year. So if you look at that first year in 15-16, you see the majority of the increase is due to what's called the allowable growth factor, which is based on the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. The following year, 16-17, you see the major determinant in that year's tax cap is that green bar, which is known as the capital exclusion. That capital exclusion is the district's debt net of building aid. So in the 16-17 year, we had our first payment for the Wells Middle School renovation project. So that debt came on the books, which allows the tax cap to increase, and again, that's what impacted 16-17 the most. You see in 17-18 and 18-19, they're somewhat consistent years. 18-19, you'll see here this yellow bar, those are pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. And when a pilot agreement comes on, it actually reduces the tax cap. So if not for this pilot agreement, our tax cap last year probably would have been closer to 2.7, 2.8%. Now fast forward to 1920. What's affecting 1920 the most? As you can see, this light blue bar, which is known as the tax base growth factor, has nearly doubled, actually more than doubled of what it has been for the past 4 years, typically. And what's the tax base growth factor? A tax base growth factor is based on significant additions to commercial properties, as well as brand new commercial properties that are coming on the assessment roll. So after speaking to the assessor's office, both Patterson and Southeast, we learned there were a significant number of additions to commercial properties within the tax base, most notably Ace Endico Extension, Brewster Honda Showroom, Peach Lake Hotel, and the one that's affecting us the most is a new building, the Algonquin Natural Gas Transmission Station, which is a new building which significantly increased the assessment roll. So these commercial properties will actually dilute the tax burden of all residential properties, thereby shrinking their slice of the pie. And that's shown here in this example. So you probably can't read from out there, but this the dark blue portion represents the residential portion of the levy. The red portion represents the commercial portion of the levy. And you see here, going to next year, there's going to be a tax shift. Again, because those commercial properties that are coming on are now diluting the tax burden of all other residential properties and shrinking their burden. So that's going to impact in 1920.
So we have a new sort of phenomenon that we haven't experienced in the 8 years since the tax cap, and that is that the tax cap at this point is at 4.06. That's the amount that can be levied, and that's based upon what you just heard Victor describe. There are 4 new commercial properties, 4 new revenue sources are available for the school district to use. And that number, 4.06, which you'll hear us talk about a great deal, it's a number that 2 members of our budget advisory are going to talk about, because conceptually it's confusing. It's a good thing. And if you are not actively engaged in the budget activities, it may look like a bad thing. And we wouldn't want anyone to think that it is a matter that we're levying this amount for the residential taxpayers. We're not. This is the amount of money that's available to fund programs, and some of which you're going to see in some of the staffing increases are associated with that. And the only way that we can make the staffing increases that we're proposing and that you heard from the budget managers 2 weeks ago is on the basis of this additional revenue. And as Victor described, and as we talked about quite a bit, TRS is the moving target that causes the most disruption to our budget. And I think disruption is a good way to characterize what occurs. Every year, we're not aware, we have no way of knowing what the TRS increase is going to be. We have no way of knowing it. And last year, you saw the impact of an increase in our contribution to TRS, which affected our ability to keep some of the positions that were vacant as a result of retirements or through attrition. We had to make some terrible choices that we did not want to make, but that's simply because we at the time didn't have these revenue sources available to draw from, and we also had, as I said, a very dramatic increase in our TRS contribution. So this chart will actually help you to see what the impact is if we chose to go back to a 2.0 tax cap, that in essence we're leaving $1.5 million on the table, which means that we have to reduce that from our budget. So Victor, you want to describe this a little bit more? Thanks.
Sure. And one point that was made by a number of members of the Budget Advisory Committee is just to make this a little more relatable. One of our members mentioned, 1.5 million, if we equate that to instructional positions, that's approximately 15 instructional positions. So if the board were to adopt a budget with a tax levy of just 2%, it would require $1.5 million worth of reduction on the expenditure side of the budget. In other words, it would likely require a reduction of 15 instructional positions. We're going to revisit this slide at the end of the presentation. Again, this budget was built on the premise of a 4% tax levy increase, but we need the board's input on whether or not the board is willing to continue with that, or if they have some other parameters in mind. So we'll revisit this at the end of the presentation. But I do want to take a look back on the past. So over the past 8 years, because the tax cap is now in its 8th year, take a look back at some of the decisions that were made in the past. The district has not always utilized the full capacity of the tax cap. And in fact, over the past 8 years, the district has levied about $1.1 million less than what the tax cap allows. Now, each year, the levy foregone, the revenue foregone actually compounds because the effects of future tax-based growth factors and future allowable growth factors. So that $1.1 million in the aggregate actually translates to $1.2 million after it's compounded. Again, equating that to instructional positions, that's about 12 instructional positions, additional positions that we could have in this budget today, if not for underutilizing the ability of the tax cap. So what we wanted to look at tonight is a look back on the past, and also recognizing that this is a critical juncture in the district's history to look in the future of what the effect would be if the board were to adopt, and again, this is just hypothetical, if the board were to adopt a tax levy of just 2%. So you see here in this chart, leading up until this current year, 18-19, again, $1.2 million that was left on the table from the prior year levies. Now that revenue is foregone forever. It's once you don't utilize the tax cap, it's gone forever. So that money is gone and lost forever. However, if the board were to adopt the 2% levy increase and again forego what the tax cap allows, the benchmark, you see this significant jump here, which is about $1.5 million. Again, the amount that would be left on the table if the board were to adopt the 2% levy. Projecting into the future, again, because it compounds each successive year, through the 29-30 year, which is just 10 years from now, the cumulative total of the compounded revenue loss would be $3.4 million. So that is a significant amount of money to forego, which is available by virtue of the tax cap, or is recommended by the tax cap because that's the benchmark that New York State set for local school districts. Again, equating it to something that's understandable, 3.4 million is approximately 34 instructional positions that would have been foregone because of the prior year's tax levy that was foregone, and then this current year, the opportunity that's before us. As Dr. Henning mentioned, each year we don't really know what to expect. Another benefit of utilizing the full potential of the tax cap is to look ahead to the future. So in 2021, we don't know what the TRS rates will be, but as Dr. Henning mentioned, it affects us the most drastically out of probably any of the different factors each year. Again, looking back to 18-19, we had a TRS rate to rate increase of 8.4%. It was devastating. It resulted in several $100,000 of additional costs to the district. Fast forward to 1920, and the TRS rate actually decreased by 16.6%, which is going to result in several $100,000 of cost avoidance, which is a great thing. However, in looking forward to 2021, the TRS Actuarial Board has already painted a grim outlook, and I actually quoted them in their most recent bulletin, where they stated tepid investment returns will result in higher future ECRs, or employer contribution rates. And that's because of their investment returns and a number of other factors. So we know, we're pretty confident to know, that TRS is going to increase again significantly next year. We also know that the Career and Tech Ed program is going to increase for next year. And we don't know what health insurance will do, we don't know what ERS will do, but our assumption is that ERS will likely follow suit with TRS because they're both pension systems and invested similarly. So by not utilizing the full potential of the tax cap, it makes our ability to mitigate those challenges ahead that much more difficult. So that's really what we wanted to convey to you this evening, and was really the main focus of our Budget Advisory Committee meeting last night. So with that, I'll continue on, and I'll try not to bore you to death. Here's a summary of our initial revenue budget. Again, tax levy increase of 4%. Local sources have increased about $700,000, and that's due mostly to the increase in the interest rates that I mentioned earlier. So we're having significant returns on our investments. Again, we're extremely limited on what we're actually able to invest in. Everything is fully collateralized and protected from loss. State and federal aid is increasing just $400,000 or 2.2%. One of the things that we talked about extensively at one of our Budget 101 workshops is that we have traditionally been underfunded by the state for foundation aid to about $20 million over the course of the past 8 years. The number is almost unimaginable at this point. But on average, each year, we receive about $400,000 less than what the state projects that we will receive. So I just want to put that out there. If anyone's looking at the state aid, keep in mind that we actually receive less than what the state says that we're going to receive. Appropriated fund balance is decreasing. It's down to $1.5 million. This actually represents the contingency on the expense side of our budget. So we are tightening our budget and reducing contingency, which could be a challenge for us next year because there are always unanticipated expenditures that arise, as Dr. Henning mentioned earlier. So our total revenue budget, $101 million, an increase of 3%. And just a note that the tax levy is still tentative, pending the taxable status date, which impacts pilots and our tax cap formula. Also, the state aid budget is not finalized. It'll be finalized hopefully on April 1st. So where does the funding come from? The state controls, and it's actually slightly more than 95%, but they control a significant amount of our budget through virtue of the tax cap and state aid. So the state controls the formula for tax cap, right? We have absolutely no input or control over 3 of the 4 factors, as we mentioned at our last budget presentation. And the state also controls our state aid. It's the money that they allocate to us. So we have no say in how much they give us. What we do have slight control over is the amount of our savings that we use, which is a finite resource. You can't rely on your savings to balance a budget for any substantial period of time. And then other revenues, which are limited because investments in use of facilities only gets you so far. So really, the state is controlling the majority of our revenue budget. We have very little local control on how our revenue budget is constructed. So with that, we'll move on to our expenditure budget. Board of Ed costs remain flat. District clerk increased just $1,000. District meeting remains flat. Chief School Administration increased just 1.6%. And the budget that we're presenting tonight, this is the all-in version of our budget. These are total numbers. Posted on our website is the detail of each budget category in terms of different objects. What was presented last week was just the principal and director's portion of the budget, which is just the supplies, materials, BOCES services. This is all inclusive of salaries and the benefits section of the budget. So this is all in, and again, available on our website along with variance analysis. Moving on to business administration, we had a decrease there, and that's a result of some retirements in the department, also a resignation. We were able to replace them with new employees at lower costs. Auditing had a slight decrease. Treasurer, an increase of $8,000. Tax collection, an increase of about 17%. And the town of Southeast and town of Patterson have adopted or are implementing a new software program, and the school district has to bear a portion of that software cost. Purchasing remains flat. Fiscal agent increased just slightly, $1,000. Legal fees remain flat. Personnel increase of about $29,000, and that is due to a software program that we're going to be utilizing for new employees filling out their applications, and also digital employee records. Records management increased slightly. We're actually also implementing an online or a digital records management system to protect our permanent files to prevent, in the case of, God forbid, a fire or a flood or something that would damage permanent records. Public information services increased as a result of the district's commitment for BOCES publicity. Operations and maintenance increased just 2%, which is a combination of salary increases and decreases actually in our utility costs. Central printing and mailing had a slight decrease. As Mr. Traylor mentioned, central data processing is increasing as a result of our commitment to certain BOCES co-cers that assist the technology department and our students. Unallocated insurance had a slight decrease of about 1%. School association dues and judgment claims remain the same. Refund of real property taxes, we had a slight decrease there, and that's a result of our ability to utilize our tax certiorari reserve. BOCES participation charge increased just 1.6%, and public library dues had a slight decrease. So our total general support budget increased about $392,000, or 4.3%. The majority of those increases, again, were a result of district technology and participation in BOCES co-cers for supportive technology, as well as increases to our operations and maintenance budget. Moving on to instruction. The lion's share of our budget increases went towards instruction, which is exactly where we want it to go, and not towards employee benefits. Curriculum development increased $70,000, and that's our commitment to our instructional staff as well as our non-instructional staff to increase our professional learning opportunities. Supervision had a slight decrease, and that's due to several retirements in the main offices of some of our school buildings. In-service training also increased, and again, that's our district-wide professional learning for educators, mostly summer opportunities and BOCES opportunities. General education increased $229,000. However, you'll see later on, this would have been a much more significant increase if not for a reclassification of a certain expenditure for retirement payments for accumulated sick time. That's subject to collective bargaining agreements. Again, the lion's share of our increase went towards our instructional budget. Special ed costs, Special ed costs increased about 5.5%, and that's due to a number of factors. You see our staffing increases in special ed, as well as rate increases for our students attending non-public schools and private schools. One of the factors that hit us this year is that New York State's rate setting unit, who sets the rates for non-public school tuition, created or settled a retroactive tuition bill, or several tuition bills, dating back to the 15-16 school year. So this year we were slapped with a bill for tuition charges, retroactive tuition charges dating back to 15-16, which significantly impacted us this year, and is also going to be impacting our special ed budget for next year.
One of the things that you may recall that both Ms. Kennedy and Ms. Osuli spoke about with regards to special education is that our objective is to make sure that we keep as many children in the district as possible, and which means then they are not sent to other facilities to receive their education. While certainly we want to make sure that we keep as many children in the district as possible who have IEPs, that also means that we have to increase staffing. So when you see subsequent slides that show an increase in staffing, that's what that's attributable to, is making sure that we can educate all children well who have IEPs, and that we are ensuring that they're successful and that they're here in their home district rather than being out.
Okay, moving on to occupational education. This is our career and technical education program for our students who attend BOCES. BOCES bills us on a 3-year average of enrollment, and as you can see, we had a slight decrease as a result of that average enrollment. However, as I mentioned earlier, we're likely going to see a significant increase in this category, probably $250,000 or so, heading into 2021, just based on our increased enrollment in the program. School library, slight increase of just 1%. Computer-assisted instruction, again, as Mr. Traylor mentioned, had a significant increase, and that's due to some upgrades to our technology infrastructure, some of them one-time events like server upgrades, as well as the commitment to an installment purchase agreement. Again, most of those expenditures are recovered through BOCES aid. Attendance is a new category which we're using to track our registration and residency verification. So for next year, proposing the budget is a part-time position for supervisor of registration residency, as well as the continuation of our district registrar. Counseling increased just 2.1%, result of some retirement in the department, as well as the addition of a new staff member. Again, we're meeting mandates for providing counseling at JFK and CB Star. Health services, slight increase, and psychological services, same 2.2%, both due to salary increases. Social work services, the same. Co-curricular activities increased 8% as we continue our commitment to K-5 clubs, and also the expansion of clubs at Wells and Brewster High School. Interscholastic athletics had a slight increase of just 2.2%. So in total, our instructional budget increased $1.6 million, or 3.3%. Again, if not for a reclassification of expense, this increase would have been much higher. You'll see in a moment where that comes in. Other categories, transportation, we discussed in detail in our last presentation, increased just 2%. Civic activities, which is essentially the Brewster Community Learning Center, is a significant decrease in that budget. The budget now stands at just $22,000. Debt service had a slight decrease of 1.3%. Interfund transfer to special aid fund. This is money that we are required to set aside for the instruction of our special needs students who attend our summer school program. Slight decrease in that area. Interfund transfer to capital fund is a new budget category. So New York State education law allows districts to complete miniature projects and receive the building aid immediately in the year immediately following completion of the project. So what we're proposing is an exterior door and lock replacement at JFK Elementary School. It was not included in the capital project, but it is important that we replace all those doors and locks and fortify that building. Again, that $100,000 with our building aid ratio, we would receive over 50% of the eligible costs back in the following year. So the net cost of the district would essentially be about $50,000. And again, it's important work that we replace the doors at JFK. Now we move on to employee benefits. As I mentioned earlier, ERS had a rate-to-rate decrease. However, we had an increase in the salary base, which resulted in the increase in cost to us of about $51,000 or 3%. TRS is a significant decrease, over $400,000 decrease in our budget this year, or 10.5%. Now that's a great thing for this year. However, we're on a roller coaster of TRS where we have increases and decreases, and it's extremely volatile. So for this year, we will enjoy a decrease in TRS expense, but be pessimistic heading into 2021. Social Security and Medicare increased just 2.2%. That's in line with salary increases. Workers' comp remains about the same. Life insurance, unemployment, and disability insurance all remain flat. Hospital, medical, and dental insurance increased 3.5%. That's in line with our premium increases. We are part of a consortium with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, and we participate through that consortium to share costs and also to deflect costs through pooling our risk. Other union welfare benefits, a slight increase of 2%. Retirement benefits, again, is what I mentioned earlier. So retirement benefits are required payouts at the time of retirement pursuant to terms of collective bargaining agreements for the different bargaining units and individual contracts throughout the district. On average, over the past several years, we've paid out about $650,000. So we've reclassified that from instruction to employee benefits to more accurately present it where it should be allocated. In total, our employee benefits budget is up about $844,000, most of which is attributable to those retirement payments, or 3.5%. And here's our summary. Our total budget, again, $101 million, an increase of 3%.
So you'll see this graphic numerous times throughout our budget presentations, because it really does describe, as Victor said all along, how much of our budget is consumed by salaries and benefits. And again, a zero-based budgeting philosophy is used to make sure that we manage this to the best of our ability, meaning that whenever we have new employees who come on, they're not coming on at the same level that former employees were, or the people who vacated the positions left the system at. So if a teacher, if we have a new teacher, we're hiring a new teacher, if someone retires at $140,000, hypothetically, we're not going to bring the new teacher in at that amount. So that's the theory behind zero-based budgeting. But again, that's the major part of the budget, any school district's budget. As you heard Victor describe, in terms of debt service, again, zero-based budgeting, as well as under equipment and BOCES and other supplies and contractual. We're looking again at making sure that we are managing these resources as best as we can, that we're looking at how we've used them in the past, as well as how we can negotiate better contracts and find other ways, as you heard both Mr. Trelaw and Mr. Carlson describe with the Lyric purchasing agreement. That's one of the mechanisms that we use, and we appreciate all the work that Lyric, as well as our local Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, uses to make sure that there's cost savings mechanisms that can help districts to better afford some of these services. And finally, this is a summary of all of the staffing that we're requesting. 21.6 are for instructional, many of which were described, and certainly our budget managers went over this in detail 2 weeks ago when they described the staffing levels that would make make them able to provide the services necessary to educate all children well. And in terms of the non-instructional staffing, we're proposing to the board an 8.5 full-time equivalent positions or full-time positions that again will support our efforts in making sure that the system runs well in service to children.
So I also just want to recap our discussion from last week with regard to two additional propositions for voters to consider, and first the board to consider. So we are now in the 7th year of our fleet replacement plan, which we're requesting to borrow $753,000 to purchase 7 buses for our students. As you saw 2 weeks ago, we have a significant number of buses that are over age 16 years old. Will soon be falling out of service. As Ms. Mary Smith mentioned, we are anticipating that we may be removing more vehicles than we're able to take in, and that's just by virtue of the age of our fleet. And while we can't predict the vehicles that will fall out of service, we can do our best to project it and rationally request 7 vehicles for replacement for next year. So you see they're requesting a 30-passenger bus, a 48-passenger bus with air conditioning, which is for our special needs students, especially during the summer school program, as well as a 5 77-passenger buses, big buses. So we're aided by New York State on these purchases at 47.5% of the cost. So essentially it works out to a buy one, get one free proposition. The first of 5 annual installments isn't due until 2021, so 2 years from now and not 1920. The projected annual cost, net of state aid, is about $90,000. And we are now paying off old Proposition number 2 requests. So the 14-15 purchases will be paid off at the end of next year. So that $483,000 commitment would then be replaced by a $753,000 commitment. And again, that's in accordance with our long-range financial plan. So the incremental cost to the average Southeastern Patterson homeowner is just $3 and $2 respectively. So the next step in this process is for the board to consider a resolution at the March 26th meeting, which would then allow the voters, the community, to vote on Proposition number 2 on May 21st. Again, as a separate item from the traditional budget vote, which is Proposition number 1. Next, I also want to recap Proposition number 3 that was presented by our architects and also our mechanical engineers with regard to installing an HVAC system at JFK Elementary School. As Dr. Zamperlin mentioned last time, JFK is one of our only buildings that does not have substantial air conditioning throughout. The proposal is to install an absorption heat pump chiller system, which is already operating in most of the buildings, so this would just be an add-on and would allow for one consistent system. We've already committed to installing the HVAC system through the installation of soffits and ductwork through the end of the capital project in the summer of 2017. So the ductwork is already installed and simply need the mechanical systems and piping to go in. So climate, the other benefit is climate. So chilled air would assist in removing heat and moisture. So as you may recall, this past summer was extremely hot, humid, and rainy. And there were a number of school districts in Dutchess County that actually experienced mold issues. And those buildings had to be closed and remediated, which cost a significant amount of money. And unfortunately, that expenditure was not covered by insurance and was just borne by the district. So it was an extremely expensive remediation, which would be alleviated with the installation of HVAC. The updated cost that was presented to the board last meeting is $2 million. And the funding would come from unassigned fund balance, meaning it would come from our savings account. And there would be absolutely no additional cost to taxpayers because it's coming out of our savings account as a one-time expenditure. Our building aid is up to 50%, so that means we're going to get 50% of the cost back through building aid over 10 to 15 years, which brings the net cost to the district down to $1 million. So just like with Proposition number 2, the next step in this process would be for the board to consider approving a resolution at the March 26th meeting, which again would then allow the voters to vote on Proposition number 3 on May 21st.
So again, you've heard us talk about some of the variables that greatly impact every school budget. Obviously, the state aid allocation is not known until April next month, the final projection, so that will certainly give us an opportunity to move forward with a greater sense of certainty. Actual enrollment fluctuates. As you know, every year during the summer, students move in and move out of the district. That greatly impacts the ability of our budget managers, our principals, and our school-based leadership teams to be able to determine, where to change. At that point, it's too late to change your master schedule, but some pretty significant changes can occur that will impact the ability of us to keep our class sizes down. So that's always a moving target. Our English as a new language learners, there are mandates both for students under New York State law as well as under ESSA. So we have to make sure that we are compliant because we want to educate all children well, but most importantly, failure is expensive and costly, and so we want to make sure that we comply and provide qualified educators so that both our students with IEPs and our English as a new language learners are well educated. Unanticipated expenditures could happen. Hopefully it's not the mole scenario that Mr. Carlson described, but that would be an example, and we hope we never have to face that. Our year-end fund balance is not available for us until September, I believe, around August, so we don't really know yet how much we've saved from the 18-19 school year budget, and obviously that's a goal every year, not to spend the budget, but to underspend the budget. And then final assessed values, again, that comes in towards the end of the summer. August. That we don't know, we might receive some tax surcharges, which then mean that we have to refund certain properties, commercial properties, and residential properties if the assessed value is higher than it should be.
So just some important dates to remember, we've laid out here through the budget calendar, but I also just want to highlight, we had a budget advisory committee meeting last night. It was very productive, and again, want to thank everyone for their time. Our next meeting is March 26th, where we'll be presenting to the board two propositions. Proposition number 2 for the fleet replacement plan, as well as proposition number 3 for the JFK HVAC install, as well as a proposal for the installment purchase agreement for the technology devices. Our board budget adoption date is April 23rd, so that's an important date to remember. Followed by the budget hearing, which is on May 14th, and the annual budget vote is on May 21st this year. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to get out and vote. As always, please visit our website. All of these presentations are posted to our website. We've now posted the budget statement excerpt, as well as variance analysis. We also posted a 3-year budget versus actual expenditure history for you to reference historical costs, because it's helpful to refer back on historical costs when analyzing our budget. So all of those are being uploaded to or have been uploaded to our website. Please continue to refer back to it for resources, as well as the resources that Dr. Henning mentioned earlier, our Budget 101 workshop series, which provided both YouTube and also the slide deck, and there's a number of resources, as well as infographics that are very compelling and help to convey the primary message of each of those meetings.
Mr. Carlson and I spent some time today meeting with Ms. Gary, who's our communication specialist from BOCES as a result of the contract. And one of the ways that we're also going to increase information available to our public is to, who don't necessarily go onto our website, is to prepare a series of palm cards, which contain some information that, especially about the tax cap, that might not be clear, and certainly is one of the, as I said, or as we mentioned earlier, one of the key components of this budget this year is really understanding what that 4.06 means and what it doesn't mean. So we are preparing what would probably be the size of a palm card to send out to everyone, to every taxpayer in the district. So it'll be done sort of old school through the mail to ensure that everyone receives the information and they don't miss this. And so as people start talking about the budget, we want people to have the key concepts in hand so that they can refer to that and they have factual information to make good choices when they vote. So the first of that series will go out, will be mailed at the end of this month, and we'll have one more going out in next month in April. And they're not meant to be lengthy or full of verbiage, but some of the things that I think are very helpful and we believe to be very helpful are infographics and other kinds of graphical representations of some of these concepts. So look out for those as well.
So with that, and we'll return to our seats, but really what we wanted to do at this point was just prompt a discussion with the board in terms of the tax levy and whether or not the board is willing to adopt a tax levy of the tax cap of 4.06, or if the board would like to adopt a levy of a lesser amount, which again would result in expenditure reductions of the amounts listed below. So with that, I will turn it over to the board.
I was just going to suggest on this that if we had questions about the budget presentation itself, we could ask them now, but I think it would be helpful in terms of a discussion about the tax levy to first move on to our budget advisory committee members who are here to speak to us. So does anyone have questions about the budget presentation itself that we can address now? No? Anyone? Okay, so we're going to move on to number 4, which is a budget advisory committee update from Christine Zirkelbeck and Scott Seaman.
I know you guys all thought I was gone.
Well, since you don't have any questions. All right, Scott has actually been at attendance of more of the Budget Advisory Committee meetings than I have. I'm a relatively new member. Thank you for including me. And last night we did, after much discussion, come to an agreement that we would support the tax cap of 4.06%. Mostly, I think one of the driving factors is because the commercial revenue is expanding, the commercial tax base is expanded, and that would be absorbing most of the cost. One of the things that we discussed was if it was not for that commercial tax increase, we would be around 2.8%, which would be what we would be doing anyway, so that the numbers seem to make sense looking at other districts in the area. One of the big concerns that keeps coming up is additional teachers and class size. And one of the things personally for me, and I'm sorry, I'm going to digress from the meeting contents, is I've been coming to these meetings since about 2008, when we went through a lot of cuts and a lot of programs being cut. And one of the things that really resonated with me during the budget presentation is seeing those things come back, like the clubs back at JFK, clubs back at CV Star. Those things all disappeared for a lot of our kids because of all the turmoil that we went through after the bank collapse and the housing collapse and all those things. So this is a positive thing for our school district, and it's one of the things that really is fundamental to the community, the value of our houses, the value of our community, is how well our school is doing and how well we're offering programs that add value to our children, to the community, to our families. Now I'll turn this down.
Thank you. The committee is made up of a number of people. Generally, it's the community. It's the homeowners, it's the parents, it's the people in the groups, and lots of small business. And what we're looking to do with this opportunity, this is theoretically once in a long time opportunity to get the school back to where it was. We're all talking, we want smaller class sizes, we want more classes and teachers in the rooms, we want more options for our kids, more different classes. We have the time, this is the opportunity. We can restore programs. We can lower the class sizes. That's a big item with a lot of people, as it should be. We can add additional teachers. If you look at those numbers, this is a whole change in the shift of how our schools are going to run. We have some fans in the audience. The high school science program, it could be back to where it was. Improving the number of classes that are out there and bring back labs. This will make our kids be able to compete for college, for life. They're going to learn actual skills by being in the back of the rooms. And we hate this other part, but the state keeps throwing mandates at us, and this is the opportunity. We can finally catch up. Our ENL, our SEP programs, we are borderline on a lot of stuff. We can get back to where we need to be. We can really hit the numbers that we have to. We can provide the services that these kids need. Instead of, having kids that we're always catching up, we're going to be ahead. We're going to be where we can be, and as height comes down the road, next year when the numbers go up again, and we have to cut things or look at savings, we're going to be where we need to be. We can go ahead with that. This is it's a long time since something like this happened, and we're probably never going to see it again. So we really strongly support the 4.06 because it's going to get us to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, for coming and speaking tonight. We appreciate you being nominated and accepting it last night at the meeting. So now is the time for any questions or comments from the board.
I would have to agree. Okay, like I said, I would have to agree with our budget advisory committee. It's been a long time. A lot of programs have been cut, and I don't particularly like the fact that we've always been trying to catch up or we've been behind the 8 ball. It's time for us to get ahead. So that's my thoughts on it.
else have any comments? Thoughts? I mean, I'll share mine. I was at the Budget Advisory Committee meeting last night, and it was a very good meeting, not just because with so many community members who are willing to give their time, but Victor was able to give a real explanation, like he does at these meetings, but in a smaller group, sometimes it's easier to ask the questions and get to the bottom of things. And, you know, by the end of our discussion, obviously, the room was in favor of the recommendation that was made. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we talked about was the number of instructional positions that are proposed in this budget, which I think is 21, which is huge. And over the last few months, we've heard presentations about ENL and how we are not coming close to where we should be on that. And this budget would give us the opportunity to get to where we need to be on that, which would truly benefit all of the kids in the district, not just those who will get the services that they deserve. The one thing that I wanted to, was something I learned last night, which maybe I should have already known, but I thought was interesting, is that very often we compare ourselves to other districts, which is appropriate in certain instances, but here it's not appropriate to compare Brewster to Mahopac, Brewster to Carmel, Brewster to Bedford, or Brewster to anybody else, because it's the tax-based growth factor that is special to us this year, that other districts are not receiving. So it really is like comparing apples to oranges. So I just thought that was helpful. Anyone else have any comments?
I too, this on? There we go. I too was at the meeting last night, and I just want to say that the discussion was extremely thoughtful. It was extremely deliberate, and we did look at all aspects of the tax levy in terms of what if we were to lower it. And like Victor had said, this is not just, there would not be just a one-year impact, but there would be a long-term impact in terms of being able to sustain positions. If we do have a lean year with TRS contributions going up, that could potentially hurt us. So the group was very thoughtful, was very deliberate. They did take into account all scenarios, and Carrie and I did not weigh in on what we thought it should be, but the group, the parents and community members that were there, they did come up with the 4.06, and we do appreciate their time.
Okay, so I guess unless someone wants to speak up now, I mean, it seems as if the board's prepared to continue with the budget proposed with the 4.06 increase.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, where are we now? Okay, we are moving on to action items. So before we do that, we want to allow for any public remarks on the 5 action items only. If you have public remarks about something else, we'll have time for that at the end of the meeting. So if anyone would like to make a public remark on any of the 5 action items, now's your chance to do so. We just ask that you come up to the podium so that you have a microphone, and that you just give us your name and address the board with your comments, and we ask that you limit them to 2 minutes. So if there's anyone who has a public remark on the action items, just come forward. All right, seeing no one speeding to the podium, we will move on to the action items. The number 1 is the approval of the 2019-2020 school calendar. Okay.
So I'd like to thank the leadership team of the BTA, AAB, and SEIU who met to collaborate on the development of this calendar. It reflects the mandate of ensuring that children from kindergarten to 6th grade receive 900 instructional hours per year, and children in grades 7 through 12, 990. If we fall under those days, it will impact our state aid, so we look very carefully at all of the options to make sure that we did not wander into that territory. You'll see that we have a few superintendent's conference days where we are limited on the number of those days that are available and what those days are called. So the first one you'll see is our day back, which is September 3rd, and that's a superintendent's conference day. The second one occurs in October, and that's a professional learning day. So again, it's really important for those days to be built into the calendar so that we minimize the impact on instruction by having to have teachers out learning during the day. Obviously, there are times that we have to do that, but we certainly try to make sure that we limit those times. The other superintendent's conference day is actually the parent-teacher conference day. That's one of the items that falls under that broad umbrella of superintendent's conference days. So that's November 5th is a parent-teacher conference day for us. And the other superintendent's conference day occurs in March, which is another professional learning day on March 4th. As you can see, we did not have going back to November, a half day before Thanksgiving, for example. In the past, we've been able to do that, but that will take us under our 990 instructional hours. So we have to all be here for the full day on November 27th. The winter break or holiday recess looks pretty similar to this current year, 18-19 school year. February break is still available from the 17th to the 21st. As we go into March, you'll see the half-day parent-teacher conferences for JFK and CV Star, which occur similarly as they are this year. Spring recess is April 6th through the 10th. And again, we have to make sure that we follow a template that Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES provides, because our children go to those programs, and we have to make sure that they are not out of those programs because we're sort of out of sync with that. So that's one of the parameters that we pay attention to. And our last day, the last day for children will be June 25th, and the last day for staff is on the 26th, and that's early release days for both of those, so those shouldn't impact us, so that we meet our mandate of 182 student days, 4 superintendent's conference days, and which totals to 186. We also built in the snow days. Again, that's been we can pretty much count on it. Right now we're at snow day number 4. We're praying that we don't have snow day number 5. But we do build that in, and everyone knows that they should not plan for April break, simply because that could certainly be time that we have to take back if we go beyond our 5 days that we build in for snow days. We saw that last spring when we had that terrible storm. It wasn't a snowstorm, but was tornado microburst, and we hope that doesn't happen again. So the calendar that we are sharing with you it reflects the best thinking of BTA participation, AAB, and SEIU.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on action item number 1? Kristen, second. Diane? Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to action item number 2, approval of MOA with Local 200 United Service Employees International Union.
This is an agreement with SEIU to add the title of Computer Support Tech to the bargaining unit.
Okay, can I have a motion on action item number 2? Glenn, and a second? Eric, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion passes 6-0. I think I didn't raise my hand before. I'm so focused on making sure I do it right. So the first one I voted for yes. Moving on to the third action item, approval of non-union personnel salary increases.
This provides a guideline for supervisors to recommend to the Board of Education increases for non-union personnel on a sliding scale of 0 to the maximum of 2.5%. These recommendations will occur in June.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on action item number 3? Diane, and a second. Kristen? Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Now moving on to action item number 4, approval of 2018-2019 instructional services contract with Bedford Central School District.
Yes, this is a contract for one of our students to attend a program at Bedford. The agreement's been reviewed by our attorneys and is being recommended for approval by Ms. Kennedy.
Okay, can I have a motion on action item number 4? Glenn, and a second, Diane. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? And the motion passes 6-0. All right, moving on to action item number 5, approval of A, memorandum of agreement with the AAB for a retirement incentive. B, separation agreement and release for the purpose of retirement for Dr. Robin Young. C, memorandum of agreement with the BTA for a retirement incentive.
So we have 2 retirement incentive agreements here, one with the administrators unit and one with the teachers unit, for those members with at least 10 years of full-time service and eligibility to retire under TRS. And then we have an agreement with Dr. Young for separation agreement for the purposes of retirement.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion on action item number 5? Diane, and a second from Glenn. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Anything of note that needs explanation there?
Personnel agenda is just routine personnel actions.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion on the consent agenda? Kristen, and a second from Eric. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to remarks, board remarks and board committee updates. Does anyone have anything they want to share?
Just had policy today, and that was really about it. It's been quiet for the last 2 weeks.
All right, anyone? Okay, so we will move on to public remarks. Again, this is the opportunity for the public to make remarks about anything on the agenda or anything else. We just ask that you come up to the podium and give us your name, address the board, and we ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes. Anyone tonight?
Good evening. My name is Rob Gallagher. I'm a teacher at Brewster High School. Been here for about 27 years, and just a couple things popped in my head while we were going through the meeting tonight. First thing was the comparisons statement that you made earlier about not comparing us to other school districts with this budget increase is what I think you referred to, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And there are a couple other things that I fear that we get compared on that don't look good for us as a school district. The first thing is the graduation rate has gone down, and some of the AP scores or scores for some of these higher level co-curricular or these dual enrollment with college courses, scores have gone down over the past few years. Now there's a lot of reasons for that, and I just hope people take that into consideration and the board thinks about why some of those rates, we've been talking about how to increase that level of the number of percentage of students who do graduate on time, but we've had a big influx of keeping special ed students in the building who are counted towards graduation, who have a very difficult time with a lot of these state tests. It makes it very difficult for them to graduate. We've had a huge increase in our E&L population who, quite frankly, very many of them have no chance of meeting the state requirements and graduating. Coming in at 17 or 18 years old and then having to pass 5 Regents exams when they don't know their own language, of Spanish typically, and we're asking them to do a lot of that in English. And so some of those scores have gone down. It reflects poorly on us, and we're working hard. We're very encouraged by the increase in staffing. For the first time in several years, I would say that the mood in the high school is positive. Looking forward, I would say that we finally have this forward-looking positive mood, and we're talking about the 2023 committee and initiative, and some of the conversations we're having. It feels really good for the first time in a long time. So I want to say thank you for that. The only question I would pose maybe to Victor and Valerie at the end here is, you know, we're having this 4.6% gift of an increase. Is there anything 2 years from now, 3 years from now that could possibly knock that down where we'd have to make all these massive cuts again?
TRS.
TRS is the only thing. And that's something we have no control over, and we get that last minute from the state. But if a big business left Brewster, we lost that commercial tax base, would that have a negative impact as well?
That would draw down the potential revenue sources.
Which would cut our ability to have an increase, maybe even have to be in that negative decrease for a tax cap, potentially. But we don't see that as highly likely anytime soon, hopefully, right? Or Victor?
And I apologize, I have my back to you. There's a good way to address speakers. A significant decrease to a commercial property within the tax base actually would not affect the district's revenues because the levy is the levy. It would affect, however, how it's distributed. So if a significant commercial property were to leave the district, unfortunately, all of the other remaining properties would absorb that property's burden. So it would be spread out among all the other taxpayers, but it wouldn't actually reduce the district's revenues. Conversely, the opportunity that's presented this year is the increase in the tax base, which allows the district to increase the levy, again, the total amount to be collected in taxes. So no, a commercial business leaving the tax base would not adversely affect the tax levy. However, it would affect all of the other taxpayers. And as Dr. Henning added, TRS is one of our most challenging obstacles with each year's budget development. Ironically, affecting this current year, 1920, it's actually a benefit to us. But every year, it's been a roller coaster. For the past 3 years, it's been up and down, in alternating years. We also don't know what's going to happen with health insurance. We all know health insurance has been up in the air, politically and otherwise. ERS the same. So there are a number of things, and most of the obstacles are beyond our control. And that's probably the most frustrating thing. I was just mentioning this yesterday at the Budget Advisory Committee. It's frustrating when we talk about long-range financial planning when most of the things that you try to plan on are out of your control.
Any other public comments at this time? All right, then we will close public remarks. And at this point, we need a motion for the board to adjourn to executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Can I have a motion? From Diane and a second from Eric, thank you. And after executive session, we will not be coming back to open meeting. So good night and thank you. Okay, I have one more thing. One motion to adjourn the meeting. I have a motion. Danny, and a second. Kristen, thank you. Good night, everybody.